The Washington state legislature is looking to make changes to the state's laws around pretrial release for criminal suspects. Here with more on this is the Center Square's Washington reporter, TJ Martinell. TJ, the Washington state constitution makes some provisions on this subject. What are they?
What the state constitution does is it provides a right to pretrial release for most individuals charged with a crime. And so there's exceptions, though. So it does allow the courts to keep criminal suspects in jail, but they operate with this presumption of a release on personal recognizance. Some of the exceptions are danger that the accused will commit another violent crime, or there's a lack of assurance that the defendant will actually show up for trial. So if they're like a flight risk and there's proof that they might try and leave the country or go to somewhere else where they can avoid trial. So that's currently what's on the books right now.
So a bill expanding the limitations on pretrial releases passed out of the House Community Safety Committee, but it wasn't the original bill brought by bill sponsors. Can you tell us about them, like what the original one was and what the substitute was?
Yeah, so the original bill would have been put a little bit more pressure on the courts to have to explain why they're releasing a criminal suspect. It would have had basically a public database or record of the orders where the judges would have to write down why they decided to make a certain decision. And what the bill does instead is that it doesn't require the database. It doesn't put the pressure on the judge to, err on the side of keeping the criminal suspect locked up. But they do have to explain in a written order of like why they're releasing them. If it's less than what the prosecutor recommended for like probation or bonds. So if there was something like that.
What did different members of the committee have to say about the bill and the substitute?
It's interesting. It seems to have good bipartisan support. The chair, most importantly, Roger Goodman, said that he was in support of the bill. He felt like the changes allowed the courts to handle this without having without a violation of separation of powers, which is what he felt like the original bill was doing, is that it was the legislature imposing its will on an area that they really don't have any authority on. And it also actually got the support of the original bill's co-sponsor, Dan Griffey, who said, I preferred the original one, but this is still, it still expands it gives the judge more discretion and it allows greater oversight over pretrial release.
Why did one of the representatives oppose the bill?
That's because it has to do with one of the reasons and the basis for keeping a criminal suspect in jail is if there was a violent assault, or if it involved a violent crime. And she felt like she needed to know what a violent offense, what the definition was. I'm not entirely sure what that means. There was also concerns over some of the GPS tracking that they allow on criminal suspects, and it changes it to where it puts more requirements on the company or whoever's handling the monitoring of a criminal suspect who's released before trial. And
do we know what the next step for this bill is?
Yeah, I believe it is been referred to the Rules Committee, which means that it's effectively its next step is to go to the House floor for a vote. And, thankfully, the reason why the committee vote was important is there's a legislative cutoff date that recently occurred where bills that don't clear their original committee are considered dead, and then they don't advance. And so clearing the committee means it's going to be able to, still be alive. And if it clears this chamber before sometime next month, when the next cutoff date is, then it'll be able to go to the Senate and then it'll still continue forward. So there were quite a few bills that didn't make it out of their committee before this cutoff date. So this is an important step towards moving forward.
Well, TJ, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.